So you've created the perfect building for your next game session, and you're wondering, how do you make awesome interior walls for this thing? Or you already have some interior walls, but they're big and bulky, and they're going to take up the entire interior of your building. Solution? These right here. It's coming right up on Tabletop Witchcraft. Hey there, and welcome back to Tabletop Witchcraft. Back in October, I had a bunch of people asking me, what do you use for your interior walls on your haunted house when that video came out? And to be honest, I didn't have a great answer at the time. I was using a 1-inch piece of foam to divide my walls up, and I found that it was really taking up a lot of room inside my buildings. So I was having a brainstorming session about a week ago, aka lying awake in bed at like midnight, and I came up with this awesome idea for these walls right here. That's it. They're 1/4 inch thick, which means they take up about 1/8 of an inch either side of your grid work on all of your buildings. So you can literally put these in any building you have. You could have a small 4x4 inch building, 5x5 inch, whatever, and literally use every square inch of the interior of that building with these walls. They stand up perfect. They look really good. I'm going to show you 3 different variations of this wall. You can even stick stuff to the wall, like cabinets and shelves. And on top of that, we can also make it for castle walls as well. I'm going to show you how to do doors. This is a packed video full of awesome ideas for interior layout for all of your buildings. If you're ready, let's go grab some supplies and let's get crafting. Okay, so a lot of people have asked me, what do I use for interior walls inside of the haunted house that I made? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you, along with what I use for walls in my castle as well. Now this build is going to require some scattered terrain in the form of chests or dressers or beds. It can be made out of Hearst Arts, which is what I'm using, or you can use resin cast pieces or even foam that you've weighted down with some screws or washers. So the walls that we're going to make in this video are going to be made out of dollar store foam core. The wall height is going to be 2 inches. It's going to allow for you to still see all the miniatures in all the rooms when you're playing and still have enough height where you can add a lot of really cool things to it. This whole video is going to be packed full of cool little tips and tricks and actually like 3 different variations of this wall. So you want to check them all out to see which one is right for you. Now I'm just using this frame and square to get some nice square cuts for all of my walls and using the Alpha knife to make the cut. Okay, now this is where having a really good cutting mat comes in handy. You can see I'm using the grid work on the cutting mat to mark out where I'm going to be placing trim along the wall. So the walls that I'm making to start are going to be some Victorian walls for the Haunted Mansion. Later on in the video, we're going to make some castle walls as well. So this is going to be more like some tongue and groove pine on the wall. We're going to add a little bit of wood grain texture to it. And as you can see, each one of those wood planks is about 1/4 of an inch wide. Okay, so I find that dollar store foam core is probably the closest thing to Styrodur in respect to holding its shape and texture when you're using a pencil or anything else. So I really like adding details into it when I can this way. And you'll see it's going to hold this crack in the wall really nice, a lot better than just regular XPS foam would hold it. Then we'll use this texturing tool to add just a little bit of texture to the wall. We're going to actually rip the wallpaper off from this section to expose a kind of a decaying section of the wall. Alright, now we're back over to the Proxxon. Very easy to make this cut with just a framing square and an Alpha knife. Just showing off my little hood here again. I love working underneath this thing. But what we're doing here right now is just making some trim for the walls. Alright, we're already on to the Mod Podge portion of this build. And I want to put this on pretty thin. I don't want to cover up all of the woodwork that I put on there. And now we're going to go to a 1/4 inch drill bit. This is if you're working with hydro stone or even if you're working with a resin cast piece. If you're working with if you made a table or a bed out of foam, you can add some weight to the bottom of that with some washers. In this case, again, since we're working with this hydro stone, we're going to drill into it 1/4 inch with this bit, and we're going to add a magnet right into that hole. Now, one of the things when you're working with hot glue and this cast stuff, I find that it sets almost instantly. It's kind of strange. It's like a big heat sink. So you got to be real ready with that magnet to get it right in there as soon as you add the hot glue. Okay, so Hydrostone needs a good primer on it before you paint it. I'm using some Vallejo Surface Primer, straight black. And the nice thing about this build is that you probably can skip all of this because I'm sure you have a bunch of scattered terrain like these already crafted. All you have to do is add some weight and a magnet to it and you're ready to go. Okay, so this is a cool little idea that I got while I was working on this. I thought it might be really neat to have a handprint on one of the walls. And instead of painting this hand onto the wall, I thought this might be a cool time to make a little hand out of some green stuff and almost use it as a stamp so I can replicate it over and over again. You'll see later on in the video that it's actually going to take a little bit of practice to get it just right, because I wasn't crazy about the way the hand turned out on the wall, which you'll see in a few minutes, but it turned out awesome on a piece of paper. So that's just how it goes, I guess. But I'll definitely be using this again in the future. And you can see all we're doing, it's just a couple of little round pieces of green stuff. It's something that you can definitely do. All we're doing for the fingers is rolling out a few little pieces of it and just pushing them right into place. On the back side, right there, we don't really care what it looks like. Again, we're just using this as a stamp. So once you get it into place, use your clay sculpting tool to press it into the rest of the green stuff so it's locked in place. That way when you go to use it as a stamp, you're not popping the fingers off of your mold. Okay, and that's what your hand's gonna look like. Alright, now you can use any metal you have laying around the house that you can flatten out or that you have that's flattened. I happen to have some of these on hand. We were looking at putting some of these up on a wall. It's really sticky back on this, and you can just use it to hang up post-it notes or reminders around your house. So a pair of tin snips is all you need to cut these. I'll put a link in the description below to all the items and tools you've seen in this video if you want to pick any of them up. Now once you cut this strip out, it's only 1/4 inch wide. We're going to use these little pliers here to flatten it right out. Okay, now like I said earlier, this stuff is super sticky. So we're not going to use foam here. We're just going to stick a strip of metal right to the bottom of the foam, and that is not going to come off. I actually tried to remove a section off camera to fix something that I had going on, and it was impossible. I was going to rip all the foam apart. So this stuff is super sticky, and if you want it for other uses and you want to pick some of this metal up, it really worked well. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, what if I want to do castle walls, right? There's no trim on a castle wall. Not a problem. Be really careful here. Take your Alpha knife. If you've got a Proxon, you can do this on the high fence on your Proxon and just cut or burn about 1/4 to 1/3 inch right in the bottom of your wall. And you can see I'm working nice and slow right here. And all you're going to do is now, again, take your strip of metal. You can see I cut the corners off a little bit. That's just so that I don't have sharp edges sticking out of the bottom. And press that into the base of the foam on the smooth side, not the sticky side. Once it's in place, then you can squeeze it together. And it's going to work perfectly, as you'll see here in just a little bit. Alright, so as I mentioned, this video is going to show you multiple different ways of making these walls. So you might be thinking, well, what if I want to hang a shelf or a cabinet on one of these walls? Super simple. This method, it's the heavier method, which means you're going to have something pretty solid or big to hold the wall up. You might need a bed or a bookcase with a magnet in it. but you can use this section of wall filled with the metal, and now you can just take your shelf or your cabinet, add a magnet to the back of that, and it'll slap and stick right to this wall piece. You can see how the corners, I have nipped those off so I don't have a sharp corner sticking out on each side. Now the bottom just had some tacky glue holding it in. This front piece isn't going to come apart. That's got the 3M sticky adhesive on it. And right there is one of the shelves that I made, and it just has a nice little magnet stuck to the back of it. I had to extend it a little bit. It's some Hearst Arts casting that I used, and I just added a little bit of XPS foam to the back. Alright, now we're just going to paint these up. I'm going to use a little burnt umber and some black. I wanted to go with a really dark wood for this look. A lot of the movies that I've seen, these old Victorian houses, a lot of them had some really dark wood in the hallways. That's the look I want to go for. Now for the areas where we're going to remove the wallpaper, I want to have like a plaster in the background. So obviously we're just going to go with a lighter tan for that. This, I believe, is a beastly brown, or actually it's a leather brown that I used by Vallejo just to do a dry brush, and I found that it actually looked really awesome right on the metal. Okay, now onto a homemade brown wash to wash all of the brown pieces. And I used some Agrax Earthshade. I wanted something a little bit richer to go over the plaster. Okay, now we're going to bring that back up with a little bit of this folk art paint. And we're not going to end here. We're going to do a few more things to this to really make it look old and kind of defunct. And you can see right where that plaster is meeting the wood, we're not going to worry about that because we're going to cover that up in a little bit with another piece of wood trim. And this is just a little bit of Nuln Oil mixed with a little bit of Agrax Earthshade. It was the end of this pot, and I just wanted to have almost like some black mold growing on the wall. And you can see I'm being sporadic with the wash. I'm not putting it over the whole piece. Now for wallpaper, go online. There's a ton of different types of wallpaper. Just type in Victorian wallpaper and have a ball, pick out whatever you want. This is going to be a 1-inch cut, just over a 1 inch, because we're going to overlap this again with a piece of foam that's acting as trim. Now for the sections where we have the wallpaper coming off the wall, we just want to put some tacky glue around the perimeter of that section so when we rip the paper off, we don't have anything just flopping around on us. Okay, so once that's on, we're going to put a bead of tacky glue right over that joint where the end of the paper is and lay a very thin strip of XPS foam that we cut earlier right on top. And you can see how quick and easy that is. We don't have to worry about being nice and neat up against the wallpaper if we had started painting it right now. Now this is a fun part. Just grab your tweezers and start ripping away. Just don't rip too fast because you could rip obviously right out of the top of the wall. Might look kind of funny. So just make sure you rip it slowly and stay, within the area that you had painted. You can see right here I rushed a little bit myself. The wood trim was still a little green. It hadn't set up or hardened yet, the glue underneath, but not a big deal. Alright, so here is where that little handprint is going to come into place. And you can see it's going to come out okay. I'll show you here in a second what my sample piece turned out like on the paper. It was much better than this. I probably would have been better off painting that one with a brush. But look how awesome that one looks on the paper. So I got to do a little practicing with that for the future. Okay, so the paper looked a little too white for me where I had ripped. So I want to dirty that up a little bit with a watered down Agrax Earthshade. Now, just like a miniature, we're going to paint the edge of all of the walls with just a little bit of black paint. Okay, now we need some doors. These doors were an awesome little afterthought that I had for this video and for the build, to be honest. It's just a very thin piece of XPS foam. I made the frame, right on that with just using a clay sculpting tool, all that wood grain, and a pen for some of the deeper indentations. And I cut that out on the Proxxon. Again, you could use an Ulfa knife and just slide that door into place. I've got all these hinges and doorknobs pre-made. I'll put a link up above to a video that'll show you how to make those. And again, tacky glue will hold that right into place. And obviously you want to make sure to do both sides of the door. Now, this was a good opportunity to do a little bit more of a modern door. You can see I have a 6-panel pine door on the left that I haven't Mod Podged yet. And I want some cool little doorknobs, so real simple. We just add a few round balls to those plates and a few hinges that I'm going to work on right there. Okay, now we just grab a little bit of this magnetic tape. This stuff cuts real easy with scissors. I cut a few rectangular shapes, and this has a sticky back to it, but it isn't as sticky as the 3M, so I added just a little bit of super glue to hold these in place. And these are just going to snap right into place on our walls when we're using them on game day. Now to take care of the shine from the printer, we hit this up with a little bit of this Krylon matte finish, and these are all set and ready for the table. Alright, so a really cool feature about these walls is that not only do they take up no room on the game table, they also take up no room on your shelf or in a box when time comes to store them. There's really nothing to them, so they store easy and you don't have to worry about damaging them. Another cool feature is that half the build is probably already done for you because you're just going to add some magnets to some pre-existing scatter terrain that you have laying around. And if all your scatter is really light, like made out of foam, just add some weight to it and you're all set. Now I got another really cool video coming out in the future that's going to have to do with the interior of the haunted house. That'll be really fun to put that one out, and I'm excited to show it. Also, if you're into magnets and you want to have a magnetic floor for one of your builds, for moving things around, you're worried about bumping things and stuff like that, check out Nat1 Videos. He had a really cool video a little while back that shows you just how to do that. If you took anything away from the video, please consider liking and subscribing, hitting the bell notification for further videos here on Tabletop Witchcraft, and consider visiting me on Patreon. It's support over there that really helps the channel, helps fund it, helps me get the materials I need to move on with bigger and better things here on the channel. And the Coven is a great tier for you to join. It's becoming a really cool, tight-knit family over there where we're sharing lots of great build ideas and crafts. So I want to thank everybody that's already a patron on my channel for helping to support it. Alright, until next time, I'll see you around.